It is almost time for the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs to begin, so tonight we're going to do a preview and prediction video for the Eastern Conference playoffs, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned tonight, we're doing a preview and prediction video for the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs that are about to begin here in just a short few days. As of tomorrow, we will actually have some hockey to watch for the first time, which feels like forever. The NHL begins some exhibition games here over the next couple of days, allowing these teams to get ready for the 2020 playoffs, which will get underway here on August the 1st. Now, I decided to break this up into two videos, as I didn't want to make this one super long and end up having it go like 30, 40 minutes or anything crazy. So we're going to do an Eastern Conference preview, and there'll be a separate video coming shortly for the Western Conference. So we're going to take a look at the 4 play-in series getting underway here and preview and predict the winners for each one. We're going to kick things off with the first series of the Toronto Maple Leafs doing battle with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, I fully anticipate this to be a pretty close series. If you take a look at their season stats from the regular season before we were paused, the Leafs had a record of 36, 25, and 9, whereas Columbus had a 33, 22, and 15 record. So really not all that drastically different. Obviously, Columbus gave up a lot of overtime and shootout losses, which ultimately could have proved very costly here in getting them up higher in the standings. They need to be able to close out those games and pick up the points where they really matter. So that's the really only difference between the two teams in the regular season. I think it's fair to say Toronto was either meeting or slightly below expectations, whereas Columbus was certainly well above expectations after the mass exodus they had in free agency. I don't think many of us, at least, had predicted Columbus to have such a strong season, but they were certainly very well coached. I think John Tortorella had a fantastic year coaching. Obviously, the Leafs went through a coaching change with Babcock leaving and Sheldon Keefe taking over, and we've certainly seen a different brand of hockey under Sheldon Keefe, and it'll be interesting to see how things go here in the playoffs. So just a quick summary here of their regular season stats. The Leafs scored 238 goals compared to Columbus's 180, so the Maple Leafs are certainly a much more of an offensive juggernaut, but defensively the Leafs gave up 227, whereas Columbus only gave up 183. So the blue line for Columbus certainly stronger. Goaltending, probably pretty even. I think Freddie Anderson, certainly the more established goaltender in this series, but Columbus goalies Elvis Merzlikins and Joonas Korpisalo both had really solid years and were somewhat surprise performances, so that certainly played a big role in their success this season. Of course, when you look at special teams, it's going to look like a mismatch here in the power play with the Leafs with a 23.1%, where in the Columbus Blue Jackets power play was somewhat anemic at 16.4, and PK-wise, well, 77.7 for Toronto, not their strongest suit by any means, and Columbus was pretty decent there in the upper half of the league at 81.7. So obviously, as we can see, Columbus is better defensively, Toronto's better offensively. Goaltending-wise, it's certainly debatable, probably relatively even, but I think either goaltender has the ability here to steal the series and steal a game or two here or there. They certainly have that capability for sure, but Freddie Anderson, I guess in the past, has certainly been kind of known for having some playoff blunders, so it's going to be important for him to get over that, and it's going to be essential for the Leafs to take the next step forward to get into the official Stanley Cup playoffs and into the round of 16 that'll be coming up here once the play-in series is complete. Now, if you look at some key players for each team, certainly for Toronto, you can look to a defenseman like Tyson Barrie, who's playing for a contract. Didn't really have that bad of a year overall, but certainly started off poorly under Mike Babcock. Certainly played better under Sheldon Keefe, but even then, I still think Tyson Barrie can play better again, and it's obviously pretty much a guarantee that he leaves Toronto via free agency. They're not going to be able to afford to retain him, and obviously he's playing for a contract, so I expect bigger and better things out of Tyson Barrie. It's an important playoff for him. And obviously the Leafs' big four guys, when it comes to salary release, when it comes to Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander, need to continue to be able to score at the rates that they were during the regular season, because obviously Columbus is a much better opponent defensively. They're going to have to put them to the test. From the Columbus side of things, they've certainly got goaltending again, like the Leafs, is going to be especially important. Can Elvis steal a game or two? That could be the big difference in the series. These are only best of 5, so there's not that much room for error. And if they get a hot goalie in Columbus, that could make all the difference in the world. Can Seth Jones and Zach Werenski shut down the Maple Leafs' strong offense? That's going to be a challenge, but they're certainly more capable of it than a lot of D pairs around the NHL, that's for sure. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and predict that the Maple Leafs do win this series. I think it's going to go the distance in 5 games. I think Columbus is going to give them a good scare. Goaltending on the Columbus side is going to be the reason why, in strong defensive play. They will shut the Leafs down to an extent, but I think overall the Leafs are just too strong offensively, and they will squeak this one out and move forward. Obviously, like I said, the big concern for Toronto in these playoffs will be their blue line, but I think it'll be good enough to get through this series because Columbus is not overly offensively gifted like some of the stronger playoff teams. So I think they will run into problems in later rounds here with that blue line. But for right now, we'll say they'll get by Columbus in a tight 5-game series coming right down to the wire. Now, next up, let's take a look at the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers. This is another very interesting series. If we take a quick look at their season records and stats here, obviously they both had pretty decent regular seasons. The Rangers are coming through a rebuild and certainly surprised some to do as well as they did, whereas Carolina's coming off a deep playoff run last year where they made some huge progress. Now, Carolina finished with a record of 38-25-5, where the Rangers were 37-28-5. So not all that drastically different. Carolina scored 217 goals to the Rangers 233, where the Carolina Hurricanes only gave up 193 goals to the Rangers 220. On the special team side of things, the power play was pretty close. Carolina was 22.3, the Rangers were 22.9, but Carolina had a much stronger PK at 84%, where the Rangers struggled at 77.4. So obviously it's fair to say here again that Carolina is the better team defensively, but at the same time the Rangers have some wild cards on their side, including some younger players looking to make a mark for themselves. You have Capo Canco, who's coming off a somewhat of a disappointing rookie season, but still looking to make his mark. You got Artemi Panarin officially nominated for the Hart Trophy. You got Igor Shesterkin between the pipes, likely being the starter. You get guys like Adam Fox and Tony DeAngelo, who's playing for a contract on the back end as well. So you get a lot of optimism back there on the Rangers side of the puck. But when it comes to Carolina, they are going to be with some seriously big holes in the blue line without guys like Dougie Hamilton and Brett Pesce. Obviously, two of their top defensemen. It's going to be a big blow. They thought they were getting Hamilton back, but then during training camp, he suffered some other sort of injury. Of course, because of the rules now, we're not getting much information, but he is going to be out for weeks is what they said. So more than likely he misses exhibition games. He likely misses this series, and more than likely would have to move on to at least the next round after this for him to get into action for the Hurricanes, but unless a miracle happens and he gets back sooner. But that's going to be a big blow. You still got Jacob Slavin back there. You got Jake Gardner. You've got some younger guys like Jake Bean and Hayden Fleury might get more of an opportunity. Joel Edmondson. Carolina's blue line is just not the same. Those are two major contributors back there. But when it comes to the offense, though, they certainly have lots of good, interesting young forwards for sure. I'm going to give the Rangers the edge when it comes to goaltending. I think Shesterkin is going to be the starter. Lundqvist is likely going to back up. And I think Igor is going to be the best goaltender in this series. The Carolina Hurricanes blue line is suspect without their top guys there. Offensively speaking, I think Carolina can more than keep up with the Rangers, but because of that, I'm going to give the edge in the win here to the Rangers for this series. I think the injuries that Carolina has had there on the blue line is going to be the difference maker here. I think the guys like Panarin and Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, and some of their young forwards are going to be able to exploit that defense more than they normally would. You can only rely on Jacob Slavin so much. And I think the Rangers are going to get past the Hurricanes here, probably in 4, maybe 5 games. The Rangers did own the Hurricanes in the regular season, and I'm not really sure we can put a lot of stock in that anymore. It's been so long, and some of these teams are looking a little different with health-wise and injury-wise. That what happened in the original part of the regular season, and normally I'd factor it in more, but I think we're going to see some things here where it's not going to really have the impact like it would have normally. But I'm going with the Rangers in this series. Now next up, let's take a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Montreal Canadiens. Now let's compare their regular season records here. Obviously, the Montreal finished with a record of 31-31-9. They are the 24th ranked team and amongst the 24 teams participating in this playoff. You get the Pittsburgh Penguins with a record of 40-23-6. From a goals for and against perspective, we have 221 for Pittsburgh, 208 for Montreal, so not a drastic difference there. Defensively, though, Montreal gave up 220, where Pittsburgh only gave up 196, so that's fairly substantial. From a special teams perspective, Pittsburgh had the better power play at 19.9 to Montreal 17.7. They also had the better PK at 82.1 to Montreal 78.1. 0.7. Now, Pittsburgh battled a lot of injuries this year. They look to be reasonably healthy, but one thing for sure that could be costly is you have to wonder if Sidney Crosby is 100%. It was reported that they believe, I think it was Elliot Friedman, said that he thought he was battling some kind of core muscle injury, which could be a difficult thing to overcome. So obviously, if Crosby's not 100%, he still can be a contributor back there if he can able to be playing and be anywhere close. But, you know, it's going to be tough without him. But Montreal is going to really boil down to Carey Price. Can Price steal this series? Can he be lights out? If he's not, if he's even human, then the Penguins, I think, are going to win this series. No doubt there. I think Montreal is better off anyways to be going into that draft lottery, have a shot at Alexis Lafreniere. I'm not sure they're really built to be contending here just yet. They basically had thrown the towel in before the season was paused. They traded away a few players. They were falling down the standings. I think they kind of accepted the fact that the playoffs weren't happening and were ready to get ready for the draft and, next offseason moves and etc. So I think that really, unless we see Price steal the show, the Penguins are moving on here. But when it comes to Pittsburgh, I think we're going to see an energized Evgeny Malkin. I think he's going to be on a tear. And a big question mark for Pittsburgh as well is going to be in goaltending. I think that Matt Murray will get this start, but I think he's going to have a short leash, and if he has even one bad game, we're going to see Tristan Jarry in that net, and he could end up stealing the starting job the rest of the way, depending on how far they go. Obviously, like I said, Pittsburgh hasn't had a full complement of players in quite some time, so it's going to be interesting to see how they all click together, but I'm definitely picking them to win in this opening series against the Montreal Canadiens. Now, lastly here, we're going to take a look at the New York Islanders versus the Florida Panthers. Now, this could be another tight series, in my opinion. Two differently structured teams. You've got the Islanders with Barry Trotz that are very defensively minded, and you get the Panthers and Joel Quenneville that are very offensively minded. Now, let's take a look at their regular season statistics here. The New York Islanders had a regular season record of 35-23-10. The Florida Panthers had a regular season record of 35-26-8, so not drastically different from the Islanders. If you look at the goals for and against, of some very stark differences here. Florida scored 228 goals to the Islanders 189. The Panthers also allowed 224 against 190 for the Islanders, so basically some pretty big differences there. From a special teams perspective, the Islanders somewhat struggled at power play this year, 17.3%, where Florida clicked at a higher rate of 21.3%. And from a PK perspective, the Islanders had the edge at 80.7 compared to 78.5 for the Florida Panthers. In my opinion here, I think overall the Islanders are a slightly stronger team. They're very defensively aware. Barry Trotz has a very tight system. The Islanders were the top defensive team in the NHL last year. They're certainly one of the top ones again in this 1920 season. I think they have the stronger blue line overall. They could also have the stronger goaltending, but the Florida Panthers have a bit of a wild card situation in their net. Sergei Bobrovsky wasn't really Sergei Bobrovsky this year, but he is capable of being much more than what he was during the regular season. We saw him last year for Columbus before he exited via free agency be a large part of why they beat Tampa and went on that short run to make it into the second round to win their first ever team playoff series. But Bobrovsky, if he plays like the way he did in the regular season, he won't even last the series. He'll get yanked and he'll be on the bench. But if he can play like he used to be able to when he was winning Vezina trophies and in last year's playoffs, then Florida will definitely have a chance because they have some really solid forwards who can put the puck in the net. But my concern with them is on both the blue line and the goaltending, whereas the Islanders, they have some pretty steady goaltending. They have a pretty solid blue line. My only concern is their ability to score a little bit more. They need a guy like Barzal to really break out. Some guys like Brock Nelson and Jordan Eberle could pick up the pace a little bit. Anders Lee, they can all contribute. They have a pretty deep forward group. They just weren't as offensively minded this year, but a lot of that is the way they're coached and how they're structured in play. So overall, I think the Islanders can probably take advantage of a lot of the Panthers' mistakes. When it comes to special teams, I don't think that's going to be much of a factor. If you look at it here, Florida's got a stronger power play. The Islanders are better in the PK. That might end up being a wash, and it's really going to boil down to the big wild card, like I said, is Bobrovsky. But overall, I think the Islanders are just a little bit too structured soundly defensively that the Panthers may not be able to overcome that. Guys like Hoffman and Dadonov that are playing for contracts are both pending unrestricted free agents. We might see them have some big playoff games here in order to try to increase their value too. So interesting times, but I'm picking the Islanders to win this series. I just don't think that Florida can get past that strong defensive structure that Barry Trotz has taught them to play so well. So those are your 4 Eastern Conference playoff series previewed with my predictions on who's going to win. Of course, as always, I want to know what you think. So let me know who you predict to win the series and give me your reasons why so we can discuss further down in the comments section. And like I said, stay tuned for another video coming here very shortly. The same thing for your Western Conference play-in series as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.